Amongst the typical sort of symptoms such as low energy, fatigue, brain fog, dysautonomia, palpitations, cold intolerances, pins and needles, other neurological type issues, one symptom that people experiencing long COVID are particularly experiencing is acid reflux or heartburn. Now, before we go into explaining why this is, let's just go through acid reflux in general terms. Now, the current management of someone who goes to their doctor or GP with heartburn or acid reflux, the typical management is to prescribe acid suppressing medication. However, what we know is that up to 90% of acid reflux is actually caused by chronically low stomach acid levels. How does this make sense? Well, what happens is actually in the stomach is your stomach sits here, it has acid in it which is required to break down food, especially protein in the gut. And what we know is actually that you need sufficient stomach acid levels to maintain the closure of what's called the lower esophageal sphincter, which sits here. So if this remains closed, no acid can come up into the esophagus and cause these heartburn symptoms that we typically experience. Now, what typically happens to people that get these type of issues is that something happens to them which causes a depletion of their stomach acid levels. And very commonly for people, this is being too stressed out, too much chronic stress ongoing, or another reason is nutritional deficiency. So to produce stomach acid in the body, we need optimal levels of things such as iron, we need zinc, and we need B vitamins, especially B5. Now, our stomach acid levels, aside from their digestive function, are vitally important in maintaining the microbial balance in the gut. So when we deplete the stomach acid levels, we tend to start getting overgrowths of microbial organisms in the gut. So the bacteria typically in our guts sit around mostly in the large intestine, which is obviously funny enough, the large one that sits around the outside. And that's really where they are supposed to belong. However, what we see is when our stomach acid levels start getting depleted, that they can start overgrowing from the large intestine into the small intestine. And when this happens, we get increases in bacteria fermenting the food that enters into the small intestine. That in itself produces a lot of symptoms such as gas and bloating. These are also typical things people with long COVID experience as well, and quite synonymous with the condition we call SIBO. So when this happens, the bacteria start fermenting our foods, producing lots of gas. That in itself produces more pressure back up into the stomach. And then therefore, this causes an opening of the lower esophageal sphincter. So when that happens, we start to see this stomach acid being able to get up into the esophagus and then causing heartburn symptoms. Despite the acid levels being lower, it's able to jump up into the esophagus. So how might this be occurring in people with long COVID or even vaccine-related illness? One mechanism this may be occurring with is to do with zinc. So one of the factors needed to produce a stomach acid. We see zinc is really harbored and sequestered in the immune system when our immune system is doing a lot of things. So especially after infection, a lot of inflammation going on like we see with long COVID, the immune system is going to be using up a ton of zinc to do that, taking it away from other sort of functions like producing stomach acid. Other symptoms you'll see when you get low in zinc levels are your hair and your skin starting to suffer, and also we just stop healing well. We really need zinc to regenerate and recover and heal from any type of injury. One of the other mechanisms in how this manifests in people with long COVID is actually possibly through their medication. Now, a lot of people approaching their doctors for long COVID or vaccine-related injury are being prescribed antihistamine medication, which seems to be one of the main sort of mechanisms involved within long COVID because it carries this sort of MCAS type presentation. Now, the mechanism of these antihistamines, especially the H2 blockers, are designed to suppress stomach acid as part of their mechanism of lowering histamine. Now, while that might be necessary and helpful for that person right now in getting control of histamine, getting things a bit more stable, it comes at the price of reducing the stomach acid levels and affecting our digestive capacity. And this is going to be the real challenge for this population, because while they are now getting a little bit of recognition from the medical community and are starting to get medication which helps, the question is whether these people are going to be able to come off of these types of medication. Because like we see with many other types of chronic illness, whether that's high blood pressure or hypothyroidism, many people going into this disease state are dependent on and required to and asked to take medication for life. So if they have high blood pressure, they need to take high blood pressure medication for a long time. If they have low thyroid function or hypothyroidism, they need to take thyroid replacement hormone. All of these things, no matter necessary in getting things under control, come at a price. Because if we start suppressing stomach acid levels long term, we are suppressing our body's ability to digest properly. Stomach acid levels are needed particularly, like we said, for protein. And if we're not breaking down protein well, that's actually quite inflammatory for our immune system. So our immune system really doesn't like seeing whole parts or whole form parts of protein sitting around in the gut because it looks at it as a foreign invader. When it's nice and broken down, ready to be absorbed, that's a more friendly appearance of the protein. But when it's in this whole form, that can trigger immune responses in the gut and trigger inflammation. Another thing we need stomach acid for is B12, which is the well-known one. We also need it for absorbing and breaking down food to absorb minerals such as zinc, again, magnesium, iron, all the things it actually requires to produce more stomach acid. And these minerals are required for vast amounts of functions in the body as well. So once you start suppressing stomach acid in someone, it can cause a lot of downstream issues and lead on to further complications, like we tend to see with this slippery slope of more medication for more side effects, which cause more side effects and causes more medication. Another effect of suppressing the stomach acid, like we've touched upon, is that stomach acid is one of our primary first defenses against unwanted pathogenic microbes coming into the gut. So when we have healthy levels of stomach acid levels, it kills off any microbes that may be coming in through our food or what we consume. When that's not optimal, we start to get buildup of unwanted species like H. pylori, parasites. So we start to build more dysbiosis or imbalance within the gut. Now, as we all know, the microbiome is becoming really popular in mainstream science or health these days, and we're becoming increasingly aware that if we build up more imbalance in the microbiome, that can affect the rest of our body and the rest of our health. So especially coming back to the immune system again, if the immune system's sitting around here and seeing parasites building up, H. pylori, more unwanted opportunistic species like yeast and candida, that starts to trigger more immune responses and immune activity in the gut, which again causes more inflammation. So we can start to see how this becomes a pretty slippery slope for people with long COVID or on these types of medication. We start losing digestion and absorption of key nutrients we need to function and especially recover from illness and like these types of people are experiencing. Now, one last thing that may be driving this acid reflux phenomenon in long COVID patients is from the adrenals. So What most people with this type of condition will tell you is that they really struggle to adapt to any type of stress or strain. If they push themselves or exert themselves even minimally, they are completely wiped out and exhausted and get flares up as symptoms. That all surrounds around adrenals, their stress coping mechanisms, and what we tend to see with long COVID is that their adrenals are completely shut down. They're not producing cortisol well, so that means that they're not adapting to more stress or change in the environment. This has quite literally come out with new research suddenly and being quoted in a lot of papers at the moment as a possible avenue for treatment in approaching long COVID. But what we know about cortisol and stress is that, well, it's quite well known that cortisol, especially from like chronic stress, will suppress stomach acid. But like we said, in long COVID, it tends to be that their adrenals are shut down. And that's because there's just so much inflammation going on around the body, and from a brain level, that's shutting down the adrenals. And what we know about stomach acid is we do actually need a little bit of cortisol to help produce stomach acid levels. So that's one more mechanism involved in this whole process within these people. So what can you do if you are someone with long COVID and you're getting acid reflux and symptoms suggesting low stomach acid, such as gas and bloating? And this is particularly, you get this gas and bloating really rapidly after eating. So like sudden onset after eating, you get gas and bloating effects. That's quite typical of low stomach acid. So firstly, if you are on medication for acid suppressing medication, then you're going to want to make sure you're supporting your nutrition, making sure you're getting good mineral support, you're getting protein, and have a plan of getting away from the acid suppressing medication. It's necessary right now, like, you know, all drugs are for chronic illness. We need things under control, but there needs to be a plan of how you're going to actually get better and not dependent on these medications. This is something you're going to have to discuss with your GP or doctor and see what you can work around while this is being suppressed. But there needs to be a plan of how you're eventually going to get off this. And this may involve working with someone to identify the real underlying reasons why the histamine is high in the first place. Because that may be more than just the acute infection of SARS-CoV-2 or vaccine. There are possibly and probably more things going on which are maintaining the MCAS or maintaining the histamine being high. If you are not on medication, then start supporting your stomach acid. You can use things such as apple cider vinegar or lemon water, honey, ginger. These things all support stomach acid levels.